Hudson County viewers, thanks for joining us again on another Friday afternoon. I am your host, John Hollywood Heides, and today we are joined by the vice chair of the Hudson County Board of Chosen Freeholders, Bill O'Dea. Bill, it's a pleasure to have you.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. So, Bill, obviously the big controversy at the county, let's just dive in here. There's been a number of deaths since June, 5 to be exact, and just one about 6-7 hours ago, a famous case, Dr. James Kauffman. I don't think most people were aware of that. You actually told me just before we turned the camera on. I didn't even know. So could you just give us an update on what happened?
So on that one, the only information I have is that it occurred today. It occurred while his cellmate was not there. His cellmate was out at a court appearance. The information that I have is that it was a rather sophisticated suicide, meaning that he is a doctor, and the way the rope, or it may have been a rope from a laundry band, don't have all the details yet, was done in a very methodical manner, like it was well planned out. Wasn't that he jumped, where someone you'd normally see a person hang. He found a way to do it while leaning down on the bed and, in essence, looking like he was asleep. So those are very, very preliminary things that have been brought to my attention, and there may even be a suicide note, but I have not confirmed that yet.
And Dr. Kauffman, I mean, not that this has to do with the bigger scope, but just in case people don't know, this was a guy who was about to be on trial for, well, eventually anyway, going to be on trial for murder, right?
Yes, yeah. I mean, he was from Atlantic County. He's accused of murdering and conspiring to murder his wife with a gang down there, and he was brought here particularly to address the fact that he wasn't safe down there because there were gang members that he was allegedly now maybe talking about that were at the Atlantic County Correctional Facility. All
right, now, Bill, if we go back to 2016, there was another death. I think it was the middle of the year then. So this is something that, has been under the microscope. I know the county, particularly the freeholders, have been investigating, trying to do their due diligence and try to prevent this from happening. Obviously, that hasn't, you haven't gotten to that point yet, but what could you tell us so far about your findings, if anything?
So there have been a total of 4. There was a death of a detainee, which was last June. That's the only one that we've gotten back a report from the committee that we hired to do an investigation. That report is not yet public, but what I will tell you is that report really focuses on the medical care that the detainee received, requested, and received while at the facility, leading up to the date that he collapsed, went to the medical center, and within a couple of days passed away. That's really the focus there, and in that case, we look at what the vendor, CFG, did, should have done, may have failed to do, and then there have been some changes already made from that, such as much more extensive effort to ascertain what prescription medications an individual who's brought there may have been taking. So it's not just simply, are you taking anything, or yes or no, and if somebody says, I was taking something for blood pressure or cholesterol, try to ascertain, because most people don't know the pharmaceutical name of what they take.
That's true.
So now it's more where's your doctor? What was your doctor? What. So in that case, one of the instances is that that individual was taking a blood pressure medication, and I think that had they known sooner what it was, there may have been other steps they could take. The other situation with that that we have to delve into, which we've made a change, is for ICE detainees, beyond what you would define as an emergency health situation, there was a process, which is an ICE process, that you're supposed to notify them and request authorization to do that procedure.
Sure.
Well, that could take sometimes 4 to 6 weeks. That could take a serious situation and make it a critical situation. So the policy that Director Edwards has changed now is that we are going to err on the side of not worrying to get the approval of ICE. If there's any thought that there's a need for any type of treatment, get the treatment, battle out with ICE, and if for some reason ICE doesn't approve it, then the county has to eat the cost of it. So that, I think, has been some of the positive things that have come out of that. And we continue to have a monitor. So we brought in someone from the National Correction Institute, a medical expert. The other thing we've done is, so the director of nursing has been fired. The director of nursing at the time was one of the individuals that there's been some, assertions of fault. That nursing director is no longer there.
And when did this happen?
That happened within a couple of weeks of the incident.
Is there an acting director? You hired someone new?
No, well, it's CFG. So CFG had an acting director, which was one of their corporate people for a while, and we had to sign off on the person they brought in, which just occurred recently. But again, that's another policy where now, as medical staff are brought in, whether doctors or nurses, there's a much more extensive process of reviewing their background, resume, experience before we'll sign off on them working there. So those, we don't want to see any tragedies, but I think those are three positive tragedies that came out of that one. If it's okay, I'll go to the towel, Jennifer Towell.
Well, real quick, I do want to talk about that, of course, but while we're on the topic of the ICE detainee, and this has a whole lot of different layers, needless to tell you, but there have been some activists, a few that have come to the freeholder meetings and have said that, this is proof that the freeholders of the county need to get rid of 287G, that agreement with ICE. So do you think that's something that may happen in 2018, or do you really think it's not related, or what's your opinion?
I'm not sure it's related, but I'm not an advocate of 287G. I think that we should get out of it. There's no need for us to be in the program. I really don't see the positive impact of it. At a time, they told us if you were going to have ICE detainees at your facility, you're supposed to be in 287G. But we went out and did research. Essex County has ICE detainees. They're not in 287G. Bergen County has ICE detainees. They're not in 287G. So it's my position that we should get out of that. It's a bad optic in light of some of the changes that President Trump has done. Whether or not we are supposedly cooperating with those, it's the perception to the public. So I don't know whether we will. It's from my position, if there's any action we can take to do that, we should, and I would support it. I would think, however, if Governor Murphy moves forward with declaring New Jersey a sanctuary state, then at that point I think we have to get out of it. So.
That makes sense. And when is that agreement up with the county?
So the 287G agreement, I think, has like 3 or 4 more years in it, but I believe can be terminated by either party at any time. I don't think that there's a way that you're bound by it, and there's like a penalty if you get out of it. So.
Okay, very good. So let's backtrack for a moment. You were about to talk about Jennifer Towell,
Yes.
a person who died just maybe, I think it was a couple days after.
No, yeah, she was a couple of weeks, yes.
A couple weeks,
Yes.
a short time frame after the first death, and she was a inmate, and she ended up committing suicide. And the thing that was a little strange about, well, there was 2 things. One, apparently she was at the jail past her sentence,
Yes,
and the other part
yes.
was the suicide after, I guess, an autopsy was conducted. She had a number of inedible substances in her stomach, and plastic and metal in it, I believe.
Yep.
So could you tell me what the update was there?
So you've seen the same autopsy that I've had access to. We've had some discussions. We have not gotten the full report back. So yes, there were two significant problems with that. The first is that Jennifer Towell, who was there not on a criminal offense, a serious criminal offense, but on a DUI.
Right.
6-month sentence. Normally, on a DUI offense, after 3 months, you go into a rehabilitation program. They've given us reasons that she either didn't want to or wasn't cooperative. Again, we haven't all the information on that, but I'm a little suspect as to why she was still there 3 months in. But beyond that, you're correct. I believe 7 days before she died. I mean, she didn't consume all those items in one sitting.
Sure.
It was something that occurred over time, which is another problem. But she shouldn't have been there anymore. She should have been released from the facility. We've been told it's the only clerical error they ever made, where instead of writing down January 1st, they wrote January 9th, or the 1 looked like a 9. Again, it could be true, but that's a super tragic situation for anything like that to happen. The other issue with her is there's a question when you come in, and one question is, do you have any mental health issues? And she put yes. And we've asked and continue to ask why she was there. It would have made more sense for her to go to a secure psychiatric or medical health facility, which there is one in Bergen County. We've been told that they brought in the psychiatric assessment unit from the medical center, and they ascertained that no, she did not need to be in that kind of unit. Again, hindsight is always 20/20. At the end of the day, it's hard to think that they were right in that initial assessment. But then we wonder about how many months later, since she spent almost all of her time there in the medical unit, whether or not there should have been another assessment, was there, and could this one have been prevented? And I think that will always be something that I'll wonder about. The other issue is, again, how does someone consume styrofoam cups, parts of plastic trays? Again, we've yet to ask the question, how'd she get a nail clipper? Because that shouldn't be in there.
Right.
But obviously, as those items were consumed over a period of time, shouldn't someone from the correctional facility observed, what happened to the packets of ketchup or mayonnaise, or where's your styrofoam cup? Because she wasn't in general population sitting in her tray would be brought there, and then her tray would be taken there from. So those are things we're still looking at, and I know that even internally, the director is looking at individuals that may have been assigned to there. The other significant question I have is, well, I believe they said there were about 3 liters of materials. My understanding is the stomach doesn't even hold 3 liters. It holds like 1.5 to 2 liters. So at one point in time, wouldn't she have been complaining about stomach pains and stomach aches?
Right, and when you just noticed.
Would her stomach have bloated? So we haven't really gotten the report back, but those are serious questions that I have about that. I mean, again, sad out of a tragedy, but a couple of positives that have occurred is we now have awarded a contract and a building out an area in the jail, which will be in essence for female inmates that have mental health issues to be able to house them. That's one of the challenges we have, is while there was one for males, because we have such a small female population, there were none for females, which resulted in Jennifer being kept at the medical unit, where the problem was, and this will touch when we get to the second suicide, the doors in those medical units are not like cells, and they're not clear doors. They literally only have a small window. So the ability to see in and observe that is really only when a correction officer goes, looks in, and checks on them, as opposed to being in an area where somebody could look and see you all the time. So we're in the process of getting that unit done for female inmates or detainees, but at that time it was not the case. Today it's still not the case, which would, to some way, contribute or at least be an issue related to the second suicide that occurred less than 2 weeks ago.
Yes, and so, then there were 2 suicides.
Well, one suicide, one gentleman collapsed, one
suicide, and, one, I guess the remains under investigation.
Yeah, and they each have their own issues, absolutely.
So, let's just, these all have their own details, of course, so let's just talk about the second suicide.
So the second suicide, the woman was brought in on a failure to appear for suspended driver's license. She was from North Bergen, and we've asked the question, why wasn't she put on a bracelet? We've been told she was arrested, I believe, on a Friday night, and she was not able to go to court until Monday. They did get a hold of a judge. The judge put a $600 bail on, and she was not able to make the bail. Again, we don't know whether she was able to call anyone, what efforts she was able to make to try to make the bail. That's what we know a lot less, because it's really just started to look at. She was, again, because of her behavior, brought to the medical unit, and that's where she was on that Sunday evening. She hanged herself. And again, knowing what happened, with Jennifer Towell, we wonder, we've now requested that we immediately take measures related to those doors, because obviously people in a medical unit, they need to be able to be seen. So there's one thing I recommended is that we camera those. There's only 3 or 4 rooms, small rooms there on the bed, so we could see that. And the second thing is to put clear doors there so at least someone could see in all the time. So that's that particular case, and that's still being looked into because it's that recent.
Yeah, it's pretty recent. And then finally, the gentleman who collapsed.
So the gentleman that collapsed, the situation with that is really going to focus on what the response time was from the time the individual collapsed to the time that officers knew that he had collapsed, got there, administered CPR. And again, that's under investigation at this time.
Okay, so obviously that's 4, and we talked about Dr. Kauffman,
Yes.
that's 5. So, I mean, I think obviously what a lot of people want at this point is accountability. So, based on what we know as of today, is this something that you think is probably the medical care provider? Do you think this is the jail director who was appointed in August, Ron Edwards? Do you think it's a combination of the two? Is there a third variable or fourth or fifth variable that people might not know about? I mean, what's the freeholders ascertain at this point?
From my perspective, each case has its own issues to look at. In the case of Mendoza, who was a detainee, and in the case of Towell, I think the medical unit, CFG, will have to be looked at as to what their level of possible culpability is, because obviously there are medical issues with both of those. In the instance of the Towell, the second suicide, and the gentleman who collapsed in the exercise area, we would have to look at the officers that were assigned there to see that. To lay the blame on the director is, you really got to look a lot at what measures. I think with the first two, it's difficult because you had to look at the experience of what occurred there to see what things should have been done. At the second two, I think as it related to the individual that collapsed, it's really the focus of the individuals that were there. Did they act quick enough? What did they do? What could they have done? What should they have done? And now from that, again, it relates to things like CPR training. Everyone that's supposed to be CPR trained and certified, are we doing any in-service training? And I think that's probably being done already now by Director Edwards. And as for the second suicide, could and should we have done something more with that unit, knowing that those windows in that door created a difficult situation in observing the individuals that were there?
Got it. Now, the freeholders, on a related note, they passed a resolution months ago urging the legislature to change the way autopsies were issued by the state.
It was sponsored. Yeah.
Yes. and there were 2 Hudson County Assemblymen, Nick Travalotti and Raj Mukherjee, who have followed up. They're working on a bill to change that.
And Senator Stack is now the Senate sponsor. I spoke to him yesterday. He's going to be the sponsor in the Senate. So.
Okay, so could you just tell us the significance of how this could alleviate some of what we've been seeing at the Hudson County Jail?
Well, I think the value of it is that every time an autopsy is done, again, in our case, we brought in a panel to really delve into each of these cases. But whenever there's an autopsy done, you gain information from the autopsy.
Sure.
Jennifer Towell is a perfect example. By doing that autopsy, we now know what the cause was. What was the volume of objects that she consumed that would show that they were consumed over a period of time and wasn't one item someone may have digested that caused them to die.
Yeah.
Which then shows, well, there had to be a pattern. This was someone who was consuming items that they shouldn't be eating over a period of time. Whoa, how do we allow that to happen? What steps can we take to make sure that doesn't happen again? So, I mean, just from that one example, I think that would always show it. In the case of the Mendoza or the detainee, I think the issue we look at is, so how significant were the medical conditions when that individual died? A heart attack is sudden, may not know. Yeah. But if there was a chronic or critical condition there, what if, was it such that somebody should have observed that sooner? And had they observed it sooner, could they have taken action to either prevent it or to get them treatment sooner. So I think an autopsy is only good information that you could ever get out of an autopsy for future consideration.
Makes sense. And on Tuesday, the freeholders passed another resolution at the caucus to try to, again, to delve a little deeper into the jail and, these ongoing issues. So could you tell us about that one?
So what we did Tuesday was we've now brought on Galileo, who is a gentleman who's really geared more to looking at the officer side of it. So he had worked, and he's really pretty much focused on the 2 suicides. He had worked in the psychiatric wing or unit at Rikers. He was as a captain. So he's able to really go in and observe from a correction officer and even any civilians, as opposed to the medical professionals. What did they do? What should they have done? What could they have done? Do individuals need to be trained in areas they don't know? So I think that's going to be the primary focus of what we have him doing for us now.
All right, that could be valuable. And then there's also a special meeting next week on Wednesday. So just the purpose of that meeting?
So that meeting is we are bringing in the panel that we originally hired to look at the first 2 deaths, which includes a doctor, a judge, I don't think we have a psychiatrist now. I think an attorney, a doctor, and a judge. So we're bringing them to, we're doing 2 things. One, to update the public about some of the things I told you that we've done to make changes in a positive vein. But secondly, that we have an opportunity now, having received this report, to go into closed session and ask them additional questions. So I have additional questions based on these statements of fact and their conclusions as it relates at least to the first death, as to other issues that I have some concerns about.
All right, and will the jail director be speaking to you at that meeting?
Yeah, he will. He'll be there. He'll be in attendance, and he'll be in attendance at the closed caucus, because we obviously want his input, and may have questions that he's the person to ask, not the panel that we have.
Sure. All right, and any closing thoughts on this specific topic?
No, I mean, I think it's tragedies. We don't ever like to see tragedies. We need to learn from them. I think that there are lessons we've learned, and I think that there are more lessons we're going to learn. I don't think you can ever prevent every death. I don't think you could ever prevent every suicide. But I do believe there are more steps we can take to improve the medical care there, especially the initial assessment of individuals when they come in, which I think we're working on, but we need to do more. But also steps to take to reduce the likelihood of a suicide and be able to not only prevent them, but to act swifter when one may attempt to take their life.
Sure. So, Bill, we appreciate all the insight. I hate to dedicate a whole interview to such a grim topic, although it is an important one. So let me just give you a few moments here. Is there anything specifically in Jersey City and District 2 that the county is working on or perhaps has already implemented that you would like to put to the viewers' attention?
Well, I mean, we're always doing great stuff in the park. We're having to do some upgrades or repairs to our fountain this spring because there are issues, even though it was a almost $6 million project. It's a gorgeous fountain. Everyone loves it. There's been some issues with the piping and plumbing, so we're going to be able to go out to do that in the spring. We're going to do some additional lighting. We did one section of pathway lighting, which makes it more conducive for folks to walk around the park. We're going to do 2 more phases this year. We're doing some work on some tennis courts. That'll be done in the springtime. We're finishing up the work at the running track. We put some exercise stations. They're going to be completed for the springtime. So there's a lot of good things going on at the park. That's kind of the jewel of the 2nd District.
All right, very good. And just 2 hot takes. Obviously, you've been around Jersey City politics a very long time, and you're very intimately familiar with what's happening to the city on a day-to-day basis. So 2 big issues I just wanted to get, again, just a real hot take on.
Sure.
So you obviously are aware about the whole situation with the federal investigation of Jersey City Police. One of the former council members has called on the council to investigate where all the money that the city allocated to the Housing Authority police details has went. We know one of the officers in the probe was sentenced yesterday, didn't receive any jail time. We also know that a former police chief has been implicated. I don't want to rehash the whole story, but just what's your whole take on this situation that's ongoing here?
So look, I think that, the legislative body should certainly look into finding out what dollars went in there. They should certainly look to find out to what degree the services that were supposed to be performed were not performed, and then see if they have any redress. Is there any way to recover any of those funds? Absolutely. I mean, that's something that any legislative body should look into. So yeah, I would support that's something that the city of Jersey City Council should look at, and I think that Mayor Fuller would cooperate with him. I think everything I know, he fully cooperated with the investigation. So I think that's a good thing. When you pay for something, you want to make sure you got what you paid for, and if not, is there a way of getting your money back? If I hire you to do some work and I find out you didn't do it, I'm going to try to get the money back that I paid you to do the work. So.
That would stand to some
Makes
reason.
sense. Logic. Yeah.
So the other hot take is just, as you're well aware, the Jersey City teachers have been without a contract.
Yes, I saw them today. I was driving down Communipaw Avenue, and there had to be 60 of them standing. I was getting ready to drop my grandson off at school, and I was like, I hope schools they're not on strike. Although I understand and appreciate their right to strike, but obviously they weren't.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, obviously it's a difficult situation. Chapter 78 is a statewide problem. It's not just a Jersey City
or
Hudson County
Chapter
problem.
78, yep.
Certainly they feel it in Jersey City,
Yep.
but again, it's a New Jersey problem. Just your take on what do you think should happen here? I mean, we're, according to the union leadership, we're very close to a strike.
I hope there's not a strike. The last time there was a strike, I was very supportive of the teachers. I'd be supportive of them again. I think I hired a coffee truck and went to some of the schools where they were picketing, give them coffee in the morning, and I probably want to do something again to show my support and solidarity. I'm a strong supporter of unions, as you know.
Yes.
They have a right to a fair contract. They shouldn't. The delays that keep a contract out for so long are not acceptable. I think the one bright light is I believe that we now have a governor who is much more in tune and understanding the unions, supportive of unions, supportive of wanting to try to get these kind of issues resolved. So I would hope before we would get to the point of a strike that maybe he would become more proactive of maybe trying to find a way to see how he could be helpful in getting this issue resolved.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, once again, the Vice Chair of the Hudson County Board of Chosen Freeholders, Bill O'Dea. A whole lot of information for you guys today. Next week, we'll be back with our former Bayonne Assemblyman and a mayoral hopeful, Jason O'Donnell. Thanks for tuning in. Have a fantastic weekend.